Hey everyone, my name is Rebecca Fallon. I am a psychologist and behavioral health consultant for Atrium, and I'm going to be talking to you today about finding resilience in the face of uncertainty. I have the great honor of working with SCAD patients in a few different capacities, both within our cardiac rehab programs at Atrium, and then also doing remote phone consults for just general stress management with a lot of our SCAD patients across the system. So I hope what I say today will offer some hope and some good things to think about in terms of staying resilient through what is certainly a unique and often difficult disease state and period of time to navigate. So, we know that mental health is a really important part of recovery from any type of diagnosis, particularly one that comes out of nowhere, which is so often the case for SCAD patients. When we look at psychological distress for heart patients in general, about 70% of heart patients will have at least some symptoms of depression or anxiety along the way. Most patients end up improving with time and doing really well. If we look at SCAD patients specifically, we know that depression and anxiety can be common. We also see a good percentage of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder due to the just shock of how this happens, how it typically affects younger women who are healthy otherwise, and can certainly be representative of a pretty traumatic event in these patients' lives. These symptoms of psychological distress, based on the research, tend to be more prevalent in younger patients for a variety of reasons. Younger patients are often surprised by the event, but also have a lot of other stressors, perhaps young kids, they may be postpartum. There are several reasons for that. We do see improvements over time. So the news is good. It's similar to other types of heart patients. We see that those first several months, even the first year, can be really difficult. As people get farther away from the event, the psychological effects tend to minimize. We also see from the research patients with higher resiliency scores tend to have less psychological distress. So we're going to talk today about resiliency. What is that? Can we improve our resiliency? What does that even mean? So I want to start you off with a question to think about. How happy are you? Scale 1 to 10. Maybe a strange question to ask a room full of heart patients, because sometimes people talk about happiness as this sort of elusive concept, the thing we're all striving to get. And if I weren't dealing with this, I would be happier. But I think when we talk about happiness, one of the things people mention as sort of taking away from their happiness is their stress, their level of stress, and the type of stress that they have. So we do, in psychology, we kind of like to blame stress for a lot of things, but I think it's important to differentiate good stress from bad stress. So there actually is a good kind of stress to have. Good stress is what we call high demand, high control stress. So situations that may be demanding, but you have a pretty high sense of control. You feel competent or capable. You know how to handle this. Maybe you've have a job where the demands are high, but you're good at it. You've been doing it a while. That's sort of the healthy kind of stress to have. Stress becomes more dangerous for us when, and what we call toxic stress, when that high control changes to low control. So situations that are demanding, meaning they affect your life in a big way, and yet the amount of control you feel is minimal. You don't exactly know how to cope or what to do. You don't have the resources you need or the knowledge that you need. Dealing with a sudden health diagnosis can absolutely be high demand, low control stress. Jobs may be high demand, low control. Relationships are often high demand, low control stress because we cannot control other people. And this is the more toxic type of stress we worry about. The other thing that often happens is when we're living with this high demand, low control stress, we often develop low support, which means the breakdown of our most supportive relationships. And relationships are just a vital part of resilience. So we want to do whatever we can to keep those supportive relationships intact. When you're living with a lot of toxic stress, relationships are harder. It's harder to show up well for relationships. It's harder to feel like you're being a good, spouse or a mother or friend. You just are often lacking the emotional energy to do that. So, the next question I want you to consider as we navigate this and think about our relationships is, who are you to the people you love and the people you work with? Work in whatever capacity that is for you. Thinking about, what kind of presence am I? What kind of energy do I bring? Sometimes you can tell this by looking in people's eyes when you come in the room. Do they look excited to engage with you, happy to see you? Or do they look away? Do they want to avoid you? It's a difficult question to ask yourself, but it's important because it gives some insight into the state of those relationships that are so vital for our resilience. Now, going back to that question of happiness, one of the things that very often can erode our happiness is this myth of balance. I think a lot of us, particularly women, have grown up and continue to be fed this myth that it's not only possible, but expected. That if we think of these as kind of the big realms of life we're all trying to navigate, that we will do them all and do them all beautifully. We will, of course, have a wonderful, intimate relationship. We will create a family, whatever that looks like for us. We will work in some way that feels valuable. We will take care of ourselves and look beautiful and exercise and have great clothes and be able to do it all. We get a lot of imaging that women should be able to do that perfectly. And the truth is, balance is unattainable. The word balance in itself is problematic. Balance implies that everything is getting equal weight at the same time. And we just know that that's not true. When we hold ourselves to this unattainable standard, the problem is we end up in this kind of unfortunate cycle of anxiety, first of all. Wherever I am, I'm anxious about where I'm not. Guilt, even if I'm doing well in one of these realms, I'm feeling guilty because I haven't worked hard enough, or because I'm not exercising, or I was impatient with the kids this morning, or whatever. We, particularly women, we are great at making ourselves feel guilty pretty quickly. And then ultimately we feel kind of angry because it's not fun to feel like you are just failing over and over again at something. So we're going to sort of dispel this myth of balance and talk about some different ways of thinking about this and the different roles we are all trying to play and how to navigate that while also staying as resilient as possible. So when we talk about resilience, I define resilience as going through a difficult time and coming out better for having gone through it, coming out stronger, having learned, having evolved. The good news about resilience is that it is not like a preset trait that you're born with or not. Resilience absolutely can be taught and practiced over time. There are ways to really improve your own resilience. So what we do, like in resilience coaching that I do, is we take this toxic stress kind of trifecta of high demand, low control, low support, and we're going to try to manipulate two of these variables. We can't necessarily change the demands of the situation you're in, whatever life is demanding of you right now. But we can develop strategies for you to feel and actually be more in control, and strategies to broaden and deepen your most important relationships. So the way we do that is by paying attention to what's beneath your feet. If you've got high demand, low control stress, most of our distress comes when we focus on the things we can't control, either things that have already happened, or we're looking forward with anxiety to things that may or may not happen, kind of imagining worst case scenario and all that stuff. What both of those things do is take us out of the present. If we're present, we're much more likely to feel engaged and capable. So we're going to pay attention to what's beneath our feet. This is an analogy a client told me once, who was a rock climber. And he said, the easiest way to climb a mountain, people think you're supposed to reach really high and grab things. He said, you need to be looking down. Look at what's the next easiest step to take right underneath your feet. That's how you make it up the mountain. So that's how we navigate resilience. What is the next easiest thing to do? What could I immediately start doing differently, thinking about differently, acting differently about, letting go of that I know is not serving me? So the goal, whenever we are navigating a difficult stage of life, is post-trauma growth. So we know SCAD patients have some post-traumatic stress. What happens much more frequently than post-traumatic stress is post-traumatic growth. So you talk to anybody who has navigated a period of life that kind of shocked them, whether it was going through a divorce, losing a loved one, navigating an illness, getting a diagnosis that came out of nowhere. Almost everybody will tell you, yes, that was a terrible stage of life, but I really did grow in some ways that were beneficial. I have a renewed appreciation for my life. I have a different perspective on what is important and a deeper appreciation for relationships, for my spiritual life, for the little pleasures that I enjoy. I got motivated to change what I needed to change. There's a lot of good stuff that can come out of post-trauma growth. But in order to get there, we have to stay resilient. And so today we're going to focus on 3 things that we can control in order to stay resilient. So we're going to talk about energy, attitude, and relationships. My little EAR acronym, EAR. The first thing is energy. With energy, I think it's helpful to think of energy as a bank account. You have a bank account of physical energy, emotional energy, spiritual energy. Literally everything you do is either a deposit or withdrawal into that account. Every meal you eat, every hour you sleep, every workout you skip or you make it to, every person you interact with is either going to energize you or draw some energy from you. What's important is when you're navigating a stressful period of time, you really want the deposits to outweigh the withdrawals. So if we look at, getting real honest with ourselves, what are the things I do that I know are not great for my energy? They're the withdrawals. I drink too much caffeine or alcohol, I'm not eating well. Some of them are physical behaviors, some are more mental. I procrastinate. I don't make decisions well. I just second guess myself constantly, or I can't focus. I don't plan very well. Those are all things that can affect the amount of energy we have. Because remember, energy is not just physical. We have emotional energy. We have mental energy. We really want to identify what's draining the energy and really try to minimize those withdrawals, and then maximize the things that tend to make deposits into our energy bank. So I'd ask you to think about, okay, what is the stuff that physically helps your energy? Whether it's that you get up and do a workout, you always feel better, or it's going for a walk with a friend that you like a lot. That's a maybe physical and mental boost of energy. Sleeping however many hours is sort of your ideal. Emotionally, maybe it's journaling, going to see a therapist, meditating. Spiritually, is it going to church? Is it making time to be in nature? Is it being with your pet? Everybody is different in terms of what boosts their energy, but it's a really good job to sort of take inventory. How can I minimize the things that are withdrawing and maximize the things that are good deposits in that energy bank? When we look at human performance, what's true is that most of us perform best right when we are stretched just beyond what we think we can handle. So, it's a busy day and there's just enough things on your schedule that you kind of keep clicking through them and you get real efficient, and that energy just stays pretty good. The problem is it's a really short walk from that target zone to the point where we are overwhelmed. So if I suddenly added 5 things to your list of things to get done today, or, let's say you get 7 hours of sleep, you feel good enough, you kind of keep that energy going. But for a few nights now, you've only had 5 or 6 hours of sleep, and you're suddenly pretty quickly in that danger zone where you're getting fatigued, you're overwhelmed, you start losing focus. So we want to do everything we can do, particularly during times of stress, navigating, recovering from an illness. You want to try to stay in that target zone in terms of optimizing your energy, because that's just where you're going to feel best and perform best. Another important thing is to stay aware of your own stress symptoms, because stress is a huge expenditure of energy. All of us have different categories of stress symptoms. We will have some physical symptoms of stress. So everybody gets some type of physical symptom: headaches, clenching jaw, muscle tightness. Get familiar with what your symptoms are. Emotionally, we get stress symptoms. We get, sad when we're stressed. Some people get kind of anxious energy when they're stressed. Other people feel exhausted. Thinking patterns. What are your thoughts? Maybe you get very negative. Maybe you get kind of feeling like a victim all the time. Maybe you get very angry. Behaviors. What are your stress behaviors? Everyone is different. They're typically not our best behaviors. I start eating junk food. I drink too much wine. I can't sleep anymore, or I want to sleep all day. Everybody's got some behavior manifestation of stress. And then interpersonally, how does stress show up? How does it affect your relationships? I start picking fights. I start getting critical of my spouse. I withdraw from my spouse. There's a bunch of different ways that we personally react to stress. So getting familiar with your stress symptoms is another really important step. What we want to do in terms of optimizing energy, keeping ourselves kind of in that good spot in terms of resilience, is really understanding the balance between daily hassles and daily uplifts. So this is research from a psychologist named Barbara Fredrickson, and she talked about resilient people. They don't have fewer hassles than the rest of us. They deal with the same stuff. Daily hassles is just the stuff of life, sitting in traffic, people who are rude or annoying, stuff you got to do for work that you don't love doing. Everybody's got hassles. Resilient people know how to offset the hassles by intentionally finding the uplifts to kind of counteract the hassles. And she defines these 10 specific uplifts. And her theory is, in terms of happiness, we would all be off the charts in terms of happiness if we knew the magic ratio. For every hassle, you got to find 3 uplifts to offset it. And so she defines 10 specific ones. The first one is joy. I think joy is one of those emotions that can be contagious. You may not always feel joyful, but being around joyful people or listening to joyful music, it really is like something you can catch. This is a picture of my daughter, Macy, when she was much younger. She's 14 now, but I think kids embody joy because they're so present. They're just in the moment, soaking it up, laughing. They are pure, unadulterated joy. And so letting yourself be present for those emotions, even if you're not feeling that deep joy, it's certainly something you can kind of catch. Gratitude is another thing that is so correlated with resilience and happiness. Happy people tend to be grateful people. Most of us have to be intentional about gratitude. That's why it's called a gratitude practice. You got to practice it every night before you go to bed. Write down 3 things you're thankful for, or 3 good things that happened that day. Our brains are kind of hardwired for negativity. We're going to see the bad things. We're going to miss the good things unless we are looking for them. Gratitude can be big. I'm thankful for my house, my family, all of that. But it can also be, I'm thankful that I saw the sunrise this morning. I'm thankful for how pretty the flowers in my yard look right now. I'm thankful my dog is so sweet. I'm thankful the nice lady held the elevator for me this morning. If you're looking for it, you really do start to view your life through a different lens, finding the good stuff. Serenity. This is another big uplift. I'm convinced there are hundreds of moments of serenity in a day, and we kind of overlook them because we're distracted and multitasking and on our phones. So taking a breath, even taking 5 deep breaths every now and then, tune into your body, look away from your screen, close your eyes for a moment, drop into the moment you're in. You can really create that peacefulness and that serenity. Hope. This is a big one. I think, these days we're inundated with news, a lot of which is bad news. It's hard to feel hopeful sometimes. There's still a lot of good news. There's still a lot of people doing good things and loving each other well and caring for each other. And it is worth looking for the things to feel hopeful for, getting involved in causes that make you feel hopeful. Interest, staying interested, staying interesting. This is a great one for relationships. Stay curious about each other, whether it's your partner or your friends or your siblings. Keep asking questions, keep learning new things. Having a sense of humor is a big one. Allowing yourself to feel inspired and in awe and proud of yourself, of the work that you do if you're working, of the family you've created, of the way you are navigating life after SCAD. You've got to talk to each other and get inspired and take some pride in survivorship. There is a lot of pride to be felt if you get present and allow yourself to feel proud of how far you come. Nobody has navigated it perfectly, but I'm sure you have a lot to be proud of. And then finally, love. Love is a huge uplift. We love to have pictures of our loved ones and little reminders of the love that is important to us in our lives. A few years ago, my daughter, Macy, was not a few years ago, several. She was in, I think, first grade. And at the time, I was kind of navigating something with work. I had been kind of stressed out, trying to make a decision, not sure what I should do. I was given an opportunity, not sure what to do about it. So I was kind of riddled with self-doubt. And she was in first grade and came home from school, and I was kind of unpacking her backpack, and she had all these little papers and everything in there. And all of a sudden I see this little slip of paper that says, "Mommy, be brave." These three little hearts. And I thought, well, that's weird. Universe, are you trying to send me a message? I mean, I definitely had not talked about my work decision with her, but she wrote this for me. And so I said, "Oh my gosh, this is so nice. Why did you make this for me? What does mommy need to be brave about?" And she kind of rolled her eyes like she does all the time now that she's 14 and said, "Because you're scared of tarantulas, mom, duh." Which I am. I mean, I think everyone should be, but she thought it was funny that I was scared of tarantulas. And so in that moment, I thought, oh my goodness, you have no idea what a gift you have given me. In your little 6-year-old head, you're at school thinking, my mom needs to be brave about tarantulas. So I'm going to remind her to be brave. And the truth is, your mom needs to be brave about a lot of things. I am very scared a lot of so many things. The world scares me. I'm scared I'm going to do everything wrong. And I need reminders to be brave and to take chances sometimes. And so Mommy Be Brave lives in my kitchen. It's moved around over the years, but it is a reminder for me to be brave. And I think at different times in life, that means different things. Sometimes being brave means saying, yes, yes, I want that opportunity. Yes, I'll give that a try. Sometimes being brave means saying, no, I'm not going to do that because I need to rest. No, I'm not going to stay in this relationship or this friendship that's no longer serving me. No, I'm not going to, tolerate that behavior, whatever it is. So over the years, I've had to tune into what does being brave mean, in this season of life, and that can certainly change. Next, we have attitude. So what am I thinking and spreading? The thing to remember about attitude is that attitudes and emotions are contagious. You know this. Think about the people you love being around. Do they have a terrible attitude all the time? Probably not. They're probably the people who are kind of uplifting and make you feel positive and happy. There are some attitudes that are correlated with resilience. So one of them is having an attitude of incorporation. This is something I talk to heart patients about a lot. When you get a diagnosis that changes your life, you can either have an attitude of incorporation or disruption. Telling yourself a story of disruption is, my life was good and then this happened and now everything is terrible. A story of incorporation is, my life is good. My life is about a lot of things. This is something I wasn't expecting. We are in a chapter right now that I wasn't expecting to be writing, but here we are. And there's a lot of good stuff still in my life. And there's a lot of chapters yet to come. And we're going to keep going. So it's acknowledging what's difficult about the current situation, but incorporating it as part of, this story of who you are that's going to continue. Another important attitude is realistic optimism. So being not optimistic like, oh, everything's fine all the time, but realistically optimistic. I am being realistic about what's challenging about this current season I'm in. I'm going to do what I can to control things, whatever I can control. I'm also going to stay optimistic and hopeful that I'm going to get through it. I'm going to remind myself of my own strength and resilience. I'm going to talk to people who make me feel hopeful, and I'm going to stay optimistic. With attitude, I always encourage folks, think about the first 5 minutes of your day. If nothing else, think about what happens in the first 5 minutes of your day, because as soon as you wake up, your attitude is at a zero. You're pretty neutral. And then what most of us do is somewhere in those first 5 minutes, we probably pick up our phone or turn on the TV or something like that, and we get inundated with information. That is the same as basically opening up your front door and inviting in every news pundit, every idiot on Facebook, everybody on the internet, and just saying, come in here and everybody yell at me at the same time. That's how I want to start my day. Your brain has been hijacked, and your attitude most likely is at a -5, right out of the gate. You're going to spend the rest of your day trying to work it back up to 0. So why not do something in that first 5 minutes that puts you at a +5? Why not get up and stretch and drink a glass of water before you pick up your phone? Or even before you get out of bed, say a little prayer. How do you want the day to go? Practice some gratitude. Envision yourself going through your day perfectly. What would it look like? What does that person feel like? If you can envision it, you're much more likely to get there. So thinking about that first 5 minutes, how can I try to put myself at a +5 as opposed to starting off at a -5? And then finally, relationships. The thing I want to say about relationships is that presence is such an important thing. Your greatest gift is your attention. The greatest gift you can give anyone, including yourself, when you are taking care of yourself, is your full attention. And attention is a hard commodity to come by these days. We are distracted, we multitask, we are not looking people in the eye anymore. And so it's really worth thinking about, how can I give my full attention to whatever it is that I am doing in order to take care of my own energy and increase the meaningfulness and the engagement that I'm feeling. So if we go back to this notion of balance, instead of thinking of having to balance all this stuff, I use the analogy of a rushing stream. So if I told you, you got to get across this stream, and the only way to do it is this series of rocks, you know very well you're going to have to get a rock, stand on a rock, get your balance, decide which rock you're going to next, firmly plant your feet, get balanced, and continue moving that way. If you've got one foot on this rock and one foot on this rock, and you're looking over here and thinking, oh, maybe I should have gone that way, you're going to fall. You're going to lose your balance, right? Wherever you are, be fully engaged. If you are with your loved ones, as much as you can, give them your full attention. Put the phone down, put the distractions down, look people in the eye, make them feel seen and heard. That's what everybody wants, is to feel seen and heard. When you are taking care of yourself, do it without any guilt about what you did imperfectly today, this morning with the kids or at work, or what's not done yet. Be fully present in your workout, in your yoga class, in your therapy session. Whatever it is you're doing to take care of yourself, you deserve to give yourself that full attention as well. So the goal is not balance. The goal is purpose. When we feel that we are doing something meaningful and purposeful, we can do anything. Humans have a huge capacity to do anything if we're engaged, if it feels meaningful. So my last message to you guys is, in navigating all of this, you are being very heroic. All of you are heroes in some way. And we define hero as somebody who creates safe spaces for other people. You probably have had heroes throughout your life. If I asked you to think about them, for most people, it's somebody who always saw me and heard me, somebody who made me feel safe. Maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a grandparent, maybe it was a teacher who believed you were smart before you thought you were smart. Maybe it was a coach who saw something in you. Maybe it was a sibling or a friend who knows everything about you and just loves you unconditionally. Heroes create safe spaces for other people. And the more we are taking good care of ourselves, the more we are able to create that space and broaden and deepen those relationships that are so important for resilience. Whenever I talk about heroes, I think about my grandmother, Eleanor. Every memory I have of her, she looks like this. She laughed nonstop. She had the most childlike sense of humor. She was so playful and such a sweet, sweet source of love in my life. When I look at that list of uplifts, she had all of them. She was joyful. She was grateful for what she had, which was not much. She remained hopeful throughout her life, which, the older I get and I look back at her life, I'm amazed that she was as hopeful and resilient as she was, given kind of what her life had been that I know now. She grew up in rural Alabama during the Great Depression, one of 7 kids. Her dad was killed when she was 13 in a coal mining accident. At the tender age of 18, she married my grandfather, who looks like this in every memory I have of him. He was, not the warm, fuzzy type, but was a very, brave soldier, fought for our country many times. And, at 19, they had my mom, and a couple years later had another kid, and they created a life. They built a life together. And throughout my life, my grandmother was sort of that heroic space for me. Um, for a while, we lived down the street from her. And yet, if I came to her house, I had her attention. She wanted to know. She wanted me to come in, sit down. She held my hand. Tell me everything. Tell me about that test you took. Tell me about that boy you've been dating. She just gave me the message, I love you unconditionally and I see you always. You don't have to do A, B, and C for me, to earn my love or for me to approve of you. I'm just interested in who you are. And it's an incredible gift to give anybody, especially, an insecure teenager, which is what I was at the time. Um, and I think about her resilience. My grandmother, when she was 55, she decided she wanted to go to college because she'd been married right out of high school and just wanted to learn more stuff. And so she enrolled in college, and I remember seeing her, type in on typewriters, writing papers and stuff like that. And it's incredible now to think of her doing that. And it took her, I think, about 7 years, but at 62, she became the oldest graduate at that time from Campbell University. And so, I think in light of all the things that can keep us resilient, she's sort of exemplifies all of that. She did a good job of making sure she had energy for the family, the space she wanted to create for other people. She kept that optimistic attitude, somehow that hopeful attitude. She really poured into her relationships and the people that she loved. And so that's a good reminder for me of why those strategies are so important. She was definitely generous and gracious, I think, which are two important concepts: being generous to others, but also with yourself, with your time, giving yourself that full attention when you need it, and gracious as you do it. And you guys, as I said, this room is full of bravery and survivorship, and I certainly hope that my message today has been helpful. Thank you so much.